Good day, everybody. My name is Dennis Collier, and the time has finally come for me to publicly disclose, for the first time ever, yeah, I'm going to do it. It's time. It's come. We're going to do it. We'll do it. Okay, sure. Yeah, let's do it. The time has finally come for me to disclose, for the first time ever, what are the 5 best sports. The information about to be presented to you has heretofore been known only by a handful of Homo sapiens on planet Earth, namely my buddies, who have actually helped me formulate this theorem through a decades-long process of philosophizing and debating, often fueled by alcohol. Thus, it is with great confidence I present to you the 5 best sports, in no particular order. Number 1, hockey. Actually, that is not in random order. Hockey is the best sport. Not just hockey, ice hockey. Ice hockey offers every single thing every other sport offers, but you have to do it at a higher speed, balancing yourself on 2 things that are this wide. Number 2, baseball. Baseball is slipping, actually, in recent years. Not like it was back like in the days when there was a team called the Montreal Expos. Now, those were the real days of baseball. But baseball is still on the list nonetheless. Number 3, curling. I think that's pretty self-evident. Number 4, mixed martial arts. I think the best line about this, I think it was not specifically about mixed martial arts, but you get the idea. The line is, pretend you're walking through a park or a big open field or something, and over here you got 2 guys shooting hoops, playing basketball, and over here you got 2 guys playing tennis, and over here you got 2 guys throwing a frisbee back and forth, and over here you got whatever sport you want to name, and over here you got 2 guys fighting. You tell me, what sport are you going to watch? And number 5 on the list of best sports, keeping in mind this list is now in random order, number 5 on the list of best sports is the sport of biathlon. And if you don't believe me, just sit back, relax, and listen to this conversation for the next hour and 15 minutes or so, and see if we can't convince you. The person that I'm speaking with is Olympian Emma Lunder, and here is her bio. Emma Lunder's lengthy career in the Canadian national biathlon team began in 2014. She made her World Cup debut that year. By February 2015, she had her first international podium when she finished second at the sprint at the IBU Cup on the home course in Canmore, Alberta. Her first Olympics, Pyeongchang 2018. She competed in 3 solo events and finished 10th with the women's relay. Her second and final Olympics, Beijing 2022, which included another 10th place finish with the women's 4x6 relay. Emma Lunder, please tell us where you were born and raised.
I was born in Vancouver, BC, but I grew up in Vernon, BC.
Emma, why biathlon?
Initially because my brother did it, but ultimately because it's such a cool combination of sports.
It is the coolest combination of sports, I think, Emma. We're going to have a great conversation here for the next hour and a little bit. We're going to talk about the training, maybe talk about some of the nutrition, maybe even talk about some areas that I've not talked about yet here, that being the behind-the-scenes funding of how these athletes make their livelihood as high-level athletes in this country. So we have a whole bunch of great topics to talk about. But Emma, let's first get into the current events, I guess, of the day. I don't know when people might be watching this, but as you and I are sitting here, Emma, you are the very, very recently retired biathlete. So tell us, how does it feel to be currently retired, Emma?
Yeah, it's been about a month and a half since the last competition. And Honestly, the biggest
Great
feeling
time.
has, yeah, the greatest feeling so far has been maybe just the relief and even now the relaxation of, May is always the start of a new training season. Things ramp up. It's super busy, tons of meetings, and um, I am still busy right now, but it's not with training. It's with a completely different pursuit, and it's very exciting.
Well, let's get into it right now. What is your current pursuit?
I am working on my bachelor degree in community rehab and disability studies. And I had already completed just under 2 years, basically over the last 10 years of doing biathlon, sort of chipping away where I could. So I have two condensed spring courses right now, and then two summer courses coming up, and also working at Starbucks where I've been for 15 years.
I didn't know you were still at Starbucks. I
I
knew
sure
you were
am.
there. But Emma, look, all these things you mentioned, these things I think are super interesting insight into what goes on, as I said, the behind the scenes life of trying to be an athlete in Canada at the highest level possible. So we're going to tackle some of these things as we go along here. Uh, but first, let's get into the career. I guess the best place to start, Emma, is at the very, very beginning. But before we get there, let me ask you just one last question um, about your recent retirement. So a lengthy career, double Olympian, but you called it quits, as you said, a month and a half ago. Maybe Emma, talk about some of the insights that were going on in your brain as to why now you're going to call it a career, especially with uh, another Olympics just on the horizon.
Yeah, I think it's a question that a lot of people have had, but as you said, it has been a long career. I graduated in 2009, and I've been doing biathlon full time ever since. So 16 years, if my math is correct. And it's such an intense activity to do and a really unique lifestyle. And I've enjoyed it, and I wanted to finish my career still enjoying it. I think I had seen teammates and other athletes maybe get to a point where they weren't loving biathlon anymore. And there were just honestly so many reasons for me. Like I said, I've been doing school. I know that that's something that I wanted to complete and sort of transition into at some point. Um, Performance wise, things weren't clicking, and I thought I had my best summer of training ever this past summer, and I went into the season being like, oh yeah, like this is the year that I will podium, and just wasn't really happening. And yeah, I didn't know going into the
Wow.
season. I
Emma,
really didn't know.
we can go off on different tangents here, but I
Yeah,
think another interesting aspect of physiology. This is a scientific endeavor that we're going here. It's nothing personal, but you're 33, I think. Is that right? 30.
correct. Yep.
So I did a little bit of background, Emma, and I looked up the top finishers in the last Olympics in women's biathlon. There were some older than 33, but I got to the top 60, and there's few and far between. Put it that way. And I think that what I would just say from the point of view of physiology, and your anecdote, I think kind of backs that up. Emma, look, there comes a point in your early 30s, I mean, and you're pushing towards the mid 30s, where the physiology, Emma, does not respond like it once did. You found that in your training, you think?
Yeah, and even last spring, summer, fall, which is our training season, I worked with our coaches and our physiologist, and I did something drastically different to any training plan I'd ever done. We
Hmm.
did these sort of like high intensity weeks of training with double intensities. We were basically doing like way more intensity than I've ever done in a condensed period, which my coach had done with older female athletes in the past and had success. So again, I was really motivated and happy that I tried it. Um, but yeah, it was, I think that's the thing with biathlon is not just physical. There's shooting, there's mental, there's your skis, your wax performance. Like the factors feel infinite at times. Um, but again, I think doing biathlon at a high level was something I've experienced. almost the highest, like a second away from the podium. And I just it was hard for me to be like mid pack or closer to the back of the pack,
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
mentally to remotivate every day to keep doing all of the correct things and, the stretching, the dry firing, the nutrition when you're not getting the positive feedback of those top end results.
Yeah. Emma, your story is the same of every athlete. Someone said you work 200% harder and you get 25% of the result.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're all human beings, and this is the reality of physiology. Okay, so let's start talking about your career. Okay, and we'll go all the way back to the beginning. But before we do that, Emma, and we're going to have lots of nuggets of wisdom throughout this career story that you're going to share with us here. But Emma, look, before we get started, I think we have to acknowledge you might have to do a little bit of explaining, maybe, about what exactly is biathlon, because not everybody, let's face it, not everyone's entirely familiar with this sport, as cool as you and I think it is. So Emma, if you were to explain to the novice, the outsider, tell us what is actually biathlon.
It is the combination of cross country skiing and marksmanship, so shooting. But maybe for a visual, it's athletes skiing around in spandex with a rifle on their backs, stopping in the range to shoot targets, skiing small loops for everything they missed, and then going back out on the race course.
So you miss a shot, you do a penalty loop. Like in hockey, you go to the penalty box. In biathlon, you do a,
Correct. So
a
you
loop.
you increase the length of your race, basically.
Right. Speaking of length, there's different lengths. So, different biathlon races are different. So tell us about the different races, and I think you've done them all. Tell us the different types of race. Now that we got the basic structure, Emma, tell us the
Mhm.
different lengths of race.
Right. So, probably our most common event is called a sprint. And for my category, women, it's 7.5 kilometers. And you're shooting two times, one time laying down, which is called prone, and one time in the standing position, which is called standing. And it's three loops. So you ski a loop, you shoot prone, you ski a loop, you shoot standing, and then you ski your final loop into the finishing line.
Makes sense.
Um, and that race essentially sets you up for future races that weekend. So typically you start with a sprint and then maybe the following day it's a pursuit, and only the top 60 from the sprint qualify for that pursuit. And you are starting the time back that you finished in the sprint. So in the
I think
sprint, if I'm a minute off the leader, in the pursuit, I'm whatever rank that is, let's call it 30th, and I'm starting a minute off the leader. Then,
and the pursuit is longer.
yeah, it's 10 kilometers, but it's shorter loops. So you're doing 5 race laps with 4 shootings, 2 times prone and 2 times standing.
And I should, because my students are going to be curious about this term that you just used, which is the term. They call it a sprint, but really, technically, it's not a sprint, Emma. In terms of the time, give us a window of minutes. Like this is the shortest biathlon race we're talking about. A good time, we're
Yeah,
talking,
20 minutes on, and again, condition dependent, course dependent, but about 20 minutes.
give or take 20 minutes. And that's the other thing about biathlon, folks, is no, um, I don't even think they keep track of quote unquote world records in biathlon, do they, Emma? And the reason I think is because the conditions are always so different. The snow, the wind, everything is
Yeah.
very, very dependent upon
And the
conditions.
courses have different elevation gains and losses. And yeah, it's not like a track or swimming where you can have this like data set. They do
And
keep
you,
track, and there are people who love the data side of biathlon, and I'm sure they have like the fastest course time ever in Canmore or in Finland or wherever. But honestly, it's not really relevant. It's so dependent on the day.
it depends on who you beat on that day.
Correct.
That's what, yeah. It's not like a yeah. It's not like a swimming or a running as you mentioned.
No,
Okay, so
no.
let's get these events straight. We have a sprint. Um, we have a pursuit.
Yeah. We have another one called an individual. That is also okay. So sprint is interval start. So each each athlete is given a time, like, okay, I'm bib 20 for the sprint. So I start 20th and it's 30-second intervals that you're starting the
And they
race.
time you personally.
Yeah. And you break the start one, then your time goes. The pursuit is the time starts when the leader starts, and that's when I have to wait my 1 minute. I'm kind of in this like starting grid with everyone in front of me going. And then the individual is our other interval start, and it's the longest race that we do. So for the women, it's 15 kilometers, um, 5 loops of 3 kilometers. And again,
And that's the
it's,
longest.
yeah, 15 kilometers is the longest, which you could be a 40 minutes on a fast day and could be up to 50 if it's a really hard course and tough conditions. But that one's interesting. It's kind of like they call it like the old school race because instead of skiing the penalty loops for each miss, you actually have a 1 minute time penalty
That's not
that
as
gets
fun, huh?
added
That's not as fun.
added on at the end. So
No.
um, the shooting can be considered to be weighted a bit more heavily because if you can hit 20 for 20 in an individual, which I have, that's like going to be a pretty good day.
Well, now that you mention that, let's get to the nitty-gritty of that as well. And now we're getting to the real nitty-gritty of biathlon. And I did a bit of research to try to figure out if there was an answer to this question as to which of the two was the more important, the skiing or the shooting. And I found mixed results, Emma. I think maybe the reason why I found mixed results is because tell you the sense that I got when I was reading like these what do they call them? Like in hockey and basketball, they have the analytics nerds,
Yeah,
they call them. They get very data driven. And I was
yeah.
reading stuff. I get the sense these guys are really focusing on the numbers, and I didn't know if it was really indicative of the truth. So I said, I have an Olympic biathlete I'm going to be speaking with. I'll just ask her. So not the analytics test, but from the eye test. What is the consensus? Is the outcome more dependent upon the skiing or the shooting, or is there an answer?
I would say it's more advantageous to be a stronger skier because okay, maybe you never hit all your targets, but we've seen athletes that have transferred from cross country that were extremely strong skiers learn the skill of shooting,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and make kind of fast gains
Mm-hmm.
and get near the top of the field. But if you're never able to increase your ski speed, but you hit everything,
Yeah,
you can have good days, but it won't be consistent.
sure.
You might have a one-off where, okay, yeah, you hit 20, you don't ski that well, but it's tricky conditions and you have a great result. But definitely, I would say biathlon, especially in the last few years, the stronger skiers have been the better athletes.
And that was kind of the sense that I was getting, I think, Emma, as well. Um, okay, I think we got a fair description of what is this sport. Like I said, folks, I suggest you check it out. Winter Olympics are coming up. One of my top attractions every 4 years when they have this thing on the Winter Olympics. The sport of biathlon, Emma just described it, I think, very, very well for us. Let's talk about you personally now, Emma. Let's go back in time, Emma, if we will. The year is 2010. You with me?
I'm with you.
2010. That was a great year, by the way. That was the year my first child was born, and we had in this country our own very own Winter Olympics. You're how old are you in 2010? You're 19. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct.
And you are already a high level biathlete. Is that right?
I was on the BC high performance team. So for
Okay.
my age, I was
Tell us about that.
I was all right. I trained with a group of 5 in Squamish, BC, and it was my first experience training full time because I had done biathlon in high school, through high school, and I got invited to
How
join.
seriously in high school?
Not seriously.
Not seriously.
For, from what I learned afterwards and the whole world of biathlon that opened up before my eyes, I did
Mhm.
not train seriously in high school.
And you're saying in comparison to other athletes, like the Germans or somebody, like they're doing a lot of hours in high school?
And even Canadians, like my
Oh,
partner,
really?
Christian Gao, yeah, just different programs that you're in, how you get into biathlon, these things all, the coaches that you have at that level. I was in the cadet program almost all the way through high school, which some of the athletes that join it have never cross country skied before in their lives. So it's so dependent. Whereas people can join a high performance team at age, 14 or 15 and start training fairly full time already. So I was,
For biathlon, is that right?
yeah, you can start in Canada, you can start, I want to say maybe 11 or 12. You're shooting air rifles initially, but by the time
Wow.
you turn 14, you're shooting the 22s.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was not your route in high school, but you are
No.
skiing. Are you skiing or are you doing biathlon in high school?
I was doing biathlon, but I was doing it through the Sea Cadet program.
Through the Sea
So
Cadet program.
just a, yeah, less competitive or advanced route, I would say.
Okay.
Um, but through that, I started going to some like local races in Vernon where I met the BC team. I kind of met the coaches and was invited to do a summer training camp. And then that was in the summer of grade 11. And then in grade 12, I got invited to join the team, which was when I said, okay, I'll try biathlon for like a year and see what happens. So then that was how I ended up in Squamish in 2010 on the BC High Performance team.
This is one of my standard questions, and I love asking people. So just to see how everyone winds up in their particular sport. Are you doing other sports throughout high school? What kind of an athlete is
I
Emma Lunder in grade 9, grade 8, grade 7?
I think in grade 7 I tried out for the volleyball team and I was on it. In grade 8 I tried out and I did not make it. Um, so I did cross country skiing with my family and biathlon. And I also did cross country running on the high school team. So that was sort of my background, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and this does ultimately lead you to fairly high level biathlon. At the age of 19, you say you're okay.
Yeah.
But this is a big turning point now, I think, from what I understand in your career. I think you'll have to tell me this story if I get this correct, Emma. So the funding gets cut in 2010? What
Yeah,
happens? What's the story?
I moved to Squamish 3 weeks after I graduated. So June of 2009, I probably moved, very end of June. I trained with the team from then until March of 2010. And after the Vancouver Olympics, I think I was quite young. I didn't really know the ins and outs, but it seemed like a lot of the funding for our team was tied to that Olympic event. And I don't think they renewed the contract of the coach who I was working with. So I quite enjoyed my year of full-time training and I had success. I saw great improvements. And then at the time in Canada, there were sort of two options: go to Canmore to the biathlon training centers or go out east to Quebec. And I didn't really
Very
want to
far.
move to Quebec. So I applied to join just a club in Canmore, Rocky Mountain Racers. And I was admitted, but just barely, from my understanding. I just made the cut because they were one of the top clubs in Canada at the time.
Can we unpack this a little bit more about the transition in 2010? Because I found that story to be somewhat odd, if I'm getting it straight. You would think, Emma, and this speaks to the whole idea of funding of athletes and routes that athletes need to pursue in order to be able to pursue their sports in this country. You would think after the Vancouver Olympics or leading up to the Vancouver Olympics, I mean, you think winter sports especially would be an enormous thing, you would think maybe in theory. But it turns out that was not the case. In fact, necessitating this kind of move in your life. Is that kind of an odd juxtaposition, do you think, in terms of?
I think often there's a lot of excitement leading up to sports and facilities are built and all of these grand things to make it happen. Because I even saw firsthand a year after the Olympics, um, there were there was like debris on the trail. There were wires left behind. Like
Wow.
I would say it took way more time than I would have imagined. It was like the event happened and then it was just gone. And we were still training there. And I was like, what the heck? These are brand new facilities. And there was like piles of just not garbage, but just equipment or infrastructure that kind of got pushed to the side. And maybe I don't know all the ins and outs of what happened with our team. I was kind of young and just doing my thing, but I would liken it to the same thing. There was all this excitement leading up. Oh, let's fund this team. They train at the Olympic venue, and then Olympics are over, on to the next.
So I find that so strange, Emma, honestly.
And
Anyway,
I will say now, Whistler's done a good job with sort of the Olympic legacy and having programs and upkeeping most of the facilities, but it seemed like it took a few years to get to that point.
okay, well, in any case, you're now training at a high level, prestigious club. Let's talk about the type of training, Emma. And you already used the word full time, right? A full time athlete. So let's talk about what does the training look like at this earliest stages of your career, in terms of the frequency and what exactly it is that you're doing.
Right. So 6 days a week, Monday to
6 days
Saturday,
a week.
and
Wow.
2 sessions per day for the most part. And that's why I would say, especially in high school, I was not
Yeah.
serious or not at a high level because I would exercise maybe 3 to 4 times a week, and that was it.
Which is
And
great,
then,
by the way, compared to the
yeah,
average Joe.
yeah. And then I transitioned into two high high effort sessions every single day. Um, so typically we would
Wow.
have like a physical workout in the morning with shooting. You'd go home, make lunch, have a little nap. Um,
Can I get some more details about the shooting workout? I have to be honest, Emma, this is not my forte at all. To talk about the training of shooting, clearly it's a skill that you need to master. What
yes.
goes into a shooting training session?
I would say it's cyclical because what you're doing in May is quite different than what you're doing in September. But our training season, like I said before, starts at the beginning of May. You would be doing a lot of shooting basics. So you'd go to the range and you wouldn't do physical activity. You would just work with your coach doing position, breathing, different sort of drills. So we would call it a static shooting session, where you're just working with the rifle with no heart rate, and then sort of build into the training season through that, where in June you start doing what we call combo, where you're either running and shooting, roller skiing and shooting, or you could even be biking and shooting. But then you're doing physical activity. You come into the range and you shoot, simulating more of a what you're doing in a race, essentially.
Yeah.
And then even that, as the summer goes on, then you do intensity combo, which is where you're doing high interval training with the shooting. So it's sort of this progression that even as a national team athlete, if I had started training this May right now, I would be doing static shooting, same as I was May 14 years ago.
Because if anyone cannot infer what Emma is describing here, folks, if you were to single out the thing that makes the sport of biathlon so unique physiologically, is this, again, I'll use the word, the juxtaposition of having to go completely still and shoot a rifle with pinpoint accuracy, and then interspersed with super high intensity levels of exercise. And,
Yeah.
and, and, and there's no sport like that, Emma, I don't think. So clearly you deliberately trained that, eh?
Yes, exactly.
You mentioned
Exactly.
breathing techniques and heart rates. You're cognizant of your heart rate. Are they monitoring your heart rate through these sessions? Is there data like that, or is it more intuitive?
We do train with a heart rate strap so that you can see your heart rate, and our physiologist would give you zones. So I knew what my heart rate was in zone 1, which is easy training. I knew around where my heart rate would be in zone 3, which is getting into like more intensity training, and I knew what my heart rate was in racing zones. So it's not that I'm laying on the mat looking at my watch. It's more
Sure.
I know the effort I'm putting out on, yeah, running or roller skiing around the range. And then when I come in, that's how I'm knowing sort of what kind of training I'm doing that day.
From what I found, Emma, in the research I tried to do, well, first of all, there's not a great deal of scientific literature about biathlon at all. There's probably 10 times as much about skiing itself. But from what I found, uh, it does seem as though a biathlete has the physiological capability as they ski into the shooting range that their heart rate drops to a level that you would not predict you'd be able to drop so low. This is uh, beneficial for the shooting aspect. Being totally still, even the beating of a heart, folks, if you can imagine, is or the rising of the chest cavity as you're trying to be still to shoot this rifle with pinpoint accuracy. That would be an advantageous adaptation for biathlon. The idea of being able to go from a really, really high heart rate to dropping the heart rate in a way that you would not necessarily predict would be possible for an athlete that didn't train that way.
Yes, I would agree. And I would also say so relative and person dependent because I, for example, typically had a lower heart rate than a lot of my teammates throughout my career. So I think
Do you
later
mean
on,
in
I
general or during the shooting? Do you mean in
in
general?
general. So
Oh
then
yeah.
when I would come into shooting, mine would drop even further because I was skiing at a lower heart rate. And I've had teammates who ski at a very high heart rate and they come in and it drops, but it's not getting to the same BPM as I am. But that's exactly what the training that we're doing. It's maybe not so much to drop the heart rate, but to learn how to shoot with a heart rate and figure out where you need to sort of back off with the skiing as you're entering the range to
Oh wow.
be at the level where you can hit targets,
Yeah.
but that you're not walking in on your skis because the
Yeah, yeah.
clock is still going.
Clock's still going. So interesting. I read something, Emma. I don't know if it's true. It almost sounds like an old wives' tale. You can tell me. But like the athletes, some of them, they're trying to time the pulling of the trigger with the beating of the heart. Is that
It's not an old wives' tale. Again, I would say, are people doing that in a race? I'm not sure. But for sure, I think especially in the prone position when you're laying on the ground,
yeah,
sometimes you can feel a lot because your chest is almost on the mat and you're getting
right.
sort of feedback from the ground.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I would say that was more when we had sort of shooting tests that were very precision based and you would hold a really long time on the target. You would you were doing everything sort of magnified to what you would do normally in shooting, because it was just a static shooting test. But you would almost feel like you were able to take the shot without any like heartbeat shaking the position.
So interesting. Talk more, Emma, about the breathing stuff, because there's lots of other modalities of exercise, for goodness sake, that are very, very, big on the idea of breathing techniques. Yoga, for example. In the context of biathlon training, what kind of breathing techniques are you guys practicing or doing?
I would say a lot of it is when we're coming into the range preparing to shoot, that like for me personally, I would do some bigger exhales, and then that seemed to like calm me down physically as I was going to lay on the mat. And ways that we would prepare, we would do breath holds. We would do breath holds with shooting, where we're holding our breath and taking 5 shots. And just yeah, there was all sorts of things that you could do. Different stages of my career, I did different things, but we even worked with one of our mental performance consultants, doing basically like a home breathwork program
Oh,
where we were doing crazy like hyperventilating and just sort of playing around and seeing,
yeah, yeah.
oh, what can the body do and what am I able to sort of take from that and use in the range.
And here's one more question. We will get to the skiing eventually, folks. But that's what bi means. There's two things here we have to address. You mentioned the mental performance side of things, and I'm not a sports psychologist either, but I think there's an interesting element there as well. Did you have any personal strategies, or is there some conventional strategies that biathletes use to maybe try to calm themselves down as they go into the range? What's going on in the mind of you or a biathlete when you're getting ready to shoot after you come from doing all this enormously hard cardiovascular work?
Yeah, it's such a that's such a hard question to answer because I think there's so many pieces of it. A lot of the way that I looked at working with a mental performance consultant was that I was just constantly adding tools to my toolbox. So it wasn't necessarily that I was using every single thing every day, but that situation dependent, I could draw on, okay, today I need to use this, today I need to use this. And biathlon is so challenging because of the mental component. You can ski as fast as you can, and you can have the greatest shooting skills and abilities. But if when you come into the range, you're thinking of the outcome, or you're very distracted, or you're crazy nervous, it doesn't matter what you can do in training. It's all in that moment, what you're able to actually piece together. So when I would ski into the range, typically in a race, I would have an area where I would flip my sunglasses up, and that was sort of my mental cue. I wouldn't say it, it was just my routine that now I'm going from a skier to a shooter. So taking my sunglasses off was like
Wow.
this
Yeah.
physical thing. Then I would look in the range
A
as I'm
physical
skiing.
transformation.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
if you don't, I've done it before where you blast into the range, you're skiing like you feel so good, and you just shoot those targets. You have 3 or 4 misses and you leave the range, and you're like, I don't even know what just happened. Like, I've also had that experience. So this was a very intentional action to be like, okay, now I'm a shooter, I'm not rushed. You check the wind flags just to gain information if there's any adjustment you need to make on the rifle. And honestly, I typically wouldn't have too many thoughts. It was a lot of the shooting was very physical for me. I would feel my elbow position. I would feel my rifle pulled into my body, and just the tension of it, I guess, or the relaxation. Um, but if there someone made a noise beside me, or I heard my name, the stadium announcer says, and Emma Lunder's on
Mhm.
lane 4, which does happen, then I maybe would take something from my toolbox where, yeah, maybe I just go to focusing on my breath work, or maybe I'm just repeating the word trigger in my head, like just something to bring me back into that moment and refocus on what I'm doing.
So cool, man. Okay, so let, let's talk about some skiing, Emma.
Yeah.
So much in this sport. Um, okay, so there's a lot of work obviously that goes into being a good shooter. If in case anyone was unaware, we just described it. But you still gotta be a superb cross country skier, and you don't get that way by waiting for the bus. So you got to put in some hours of training. Let's talk about the kind of training that you would do to develop your capacity as a skier. So you gave us the number, Emma. You said 6 days a week of training. Like this is in May, so at the big. You're calling May the beginning of the
Yes, that's
of
when
the
like that's
preparatory
what we call it,
period.
like skier New Year's is
Skier
like
New Year's is
April
May.
30th into May
I
1st.
did not know that. Now I will know. That's skier New Year. You
Mm,
tell us what's happening generally. I know every program is different.
yeah.
Generally speaking, put a program together for the
In
listeners.
this in the spring, you're not on snow typically. In Canmore, we are not on snow in the spring. So the activities that you're doing are roller skiing, which is we have our poles, we have these special roller skis, and we can do classic or skate skiing. So you're mimicking what you do on snow. Running is another big component of the program. Ski bounding, which is essentially like running up hills with ski poles, so you're still getting your arms working.
You're telling me things I've never heard of.
Okay,
Ski
biking,
bounding,
ski
running uphill.
bounding. Yeah, and
Never heard of it.
we do ski bounding intervals in the spring. So it's when
So
you're
what
in
is
the
it?
worst
You're
shape.
running up a hill?
with poles. So you're using your arms
Yeah.
and your legs, and they're kind of in tandem as you would be skiing. Um, but yeah, it's just basically another form of
Sound,
cardio where your arms
sounds
are
brutal.
involved. Let's to get the lactate up, which is always a fun thing.
So,
A little bit of biking. My team, the national team here in Canmore, always did minimal biking, a lot more running and roller skiing. Just I think it's quicker to get in shape doing those. Biking, you need more hours to get the same impact.
sure.
And then strength training. So in the gym, doing like a ski specific strength program.
Okay, so you just tacked on there at the end. Now you're talking my area, the resistance training stuff. But most of the stuff you mentioned, we have to, I think, classify, Emma, as, let's just call it like aerobic cardiovascular type stuff. You're
Yeah.
building the cardiovascular engine with
Yes.
these different
Correct.
with these different modalities.
Correct.
Let me ask you this: do you, like, if you were a marathon runner, okay, or any runner actually, even a runner of similar distance to or time that a biathlete would ski for. These folks, Emma, are very, very cognizant of the miles per week. That's a
Mm.
metric that they use. I'm getting the
Mm-hmm.
sense that in biathlon, it's not a matter of like I ran this many kilometers per
Mm-mm.
day, and I'm no.
It's all about the hours for us, is how we measure it. So it's time. I'll have a time on my training plan, 3 hours, zone one. So it's time and zone. And that's what you're using, the coaches use to build the program.
Time and zone to, as I say, to build the engine.
Yeah, exactly. And in May, you're typically doing a lot of hours at an easy pace,
Yeah,
sort of getting the body back. You want to build up the volume,
yeah,
combined with 2 days a week in the gym, so
right.
two strength sessions. And that's sort of what the May and June essentially are like. And then as the season goes, building in more intensity training.
2 days a week in the gym. Well, what are you doing, Emma? Like whole body type stuff on both days,
Hmm.
generally speaking?
Yeah. Yes. I through my career, I did a lot of like back squats or rear foot elevated split squats. So you're getting the like balance component of
Yep,
it.
yep.
We do a lot of pull-ups. Uh, our strength programs were individualized around our strengths and weaknesses and also injuries. So
Cool.
I
That's very
had
cool.
some like neck and shoulder stuff the last 5 years or so. So I had a lot of sort of specific like rows and things like that to build up the strength. So yeah, a lot of you would have a lower body and upper body combined both days. We weren't doing like leg days and arm days. It was like, yeah, 2 days a week of a general
Okay.
program.
So that's a pretty hellacious regime. Not much time for extracurriculars involved in that type of a workout program, Emma.
You would think that. You would think that.
Oh, you did? You found, well, you said you were still working at Starbucks, right?
Worked at
Th- th-
Starbucks my whole
Through all this.
biathlon career.
Um, Speaking of a nutrition related item, let's go into that for a little
Have
bit.
you ever had a frappuccino?
Never,
They're not healthy.
never.
You should
Emma,
try
my
one.
joke is I go into Starbucks and I ask for a black dark roast, and it's like I have 10 heads. I say, what do you mean, like a Vente Londe Grande something? No, give
No,
me a
you're
black
my
coffee.
favorite customer. It's so easy to give someone a
Give me a black
black
coffee,
coffee.
Emma. That's my thing. Give me a
I
black
love
coffee.
that. That makes my life so easy.
Okay, so let's talk about nutrition. Okay, I'm going to ask you a very open-ended question about just what nutritional considerations come to mind, folks. You just heard her describe this kind of a program that these biathletes are undertaking. Through all that, what comes to mind, Em, if someone asks you to talk about nutrition?
Carbs is what comes to
Carbs.
mind. And we are doing so much training, typically in I won't speak for cross country because I wasn't a cross country athlete, but as a biathlete, typically, especially over the years when we worked with a nutritionist, people on the national team would be under eating. So we did not want to be in a calorie deficit. We wanted to absorb the training.
Sorry, Emma, let me just, are you speaking, because I had another guest who, at least one other female athlete has mentioned this. She had a big thing about reds.
Yes,
Do you mean the female athletes or males as well? Everybody under eating, or are you saying specifically
everybody.
people on your team? Everybody's under eating. Yeah, yeah,
I would say that's the just for the amount of work that we're doing, it's almost hard to
yeah. It is.
fuel properly
You're
day in and day out and not
100%.
it be depleted.
And,
And I,
and I was somewhat misleading in my asking it that way. It's not entirely a female thing. Female athlete triad used to be a thing back in the day. They kind of got rid of that, Emma, when they realized that, look, the problem is people are not eating enough frigging food. And it could
mhm,
be females, it could be males as well.
mhm.
Like folks, you just heard what the woman's doing for her activity.
I know.
It's hard. It's hard to eat too much for that level of activity. So that was your answer when I asked you open-endedly. Carbs came to mind and eating enough of them.
But I will say, we've seen in biathlon and cross country, and I think there has been research on this, the prevalence of RED-S or eating disorders, predominantly female, or perhaps that's what's been studied, but I think it's so hard in an endurance sport, especially when you're seeing the elite athletes looking a certain way, that even if you're doing your training, it's hard not to have that comparison, right?
And honest to God, man, my heart goes out to you. But like, what? You're
Like you
not the
just see
first.
these like Norwegian, like muscly
Yeah,
goddesses without an ounce of fat on their body,
and that
and
affects
you're
you.
like, am I supposed to look
And
like
that
that?
affects you, eh?
I I mean, I would say I had some very good role models growing up, and I felt like I had a fairly positive relationship with food, and it wasn't something that I put a lot of mental energy into. And I can also say I've seen so many athletes and friends have an extremely difficult relationship with food and being an athlete.
Yeah, it's terrible, Emma.
It's just
It
so tricky, but I think it's a really important thing to talk about. And as I entered the national team, I think 9 years ago, that was sort of my first introduction to working with a nutritionist and having an educated specialist who could answer questions or suggest things and help. And I think it's hard when you're a young athlete and maybe you're the most
Yep,
vulnerable,
you
you
are right.
may not have that
100%.
support. So
Harder when you're
that's
younger.
and that's when the sort of unhealthy habits and behaviors and patterns, I think, form. And then you get to the national team and you have, this specialist, but you've already kind of conditioned yourself to eat in a certain way or have a certain relationship with food. And I think that's what I've seen is it's really challenging to change that.
What can be done, Emma? I wish we had an easy answer. It seems like if you could just not, if you could just not give a shit. Pardon my
Right,
French.
right.
Like, who
I
cares? Like,
think,
this Norwegian looks fantastic. Look, I'm a biathlon machine. I don't care what she looks like.
yeah.
I'm doing my own thing. It's easier said than done for sure. I don't know. I wish I had an easy answer. My heart goes out to these athletes struggling with this, honestly.
I think a good thing that I've seen through the course of my career is maybe the openness that other athletes have had, whether they've retired and then
Openness.
spoke out about it, or they're current, like there are some really strong leaders, I would say, that, um, yeah, have either talked about their own struggles or just the importance of like talking about it with your teammates. I think teams can make sure that they're working with a nutritionist who's helpful for the team. I also think my perception is a lot of people who go into nutrition maybe go into it because they have had their own sort of struggles. And I think, yeah, the kind of like being open, providing information, that part has changed a lot as I've been a
Well,
biathlete.
that's reassuring. That's reassuring.
Yes, yes.
All right,
But yeah,
let
it's a tricky one for sure.
it's a tricky one. Let's change topics. Actually, that was a very good discussion about nutrition-related issues that came to mind for you. The other thing I wanted to ask you, because again, look, biathlon, we could talk all night about the intricacies of this sport, but we talked about we talked about preparing the cardiovascular machine. You talked about resistance training. You talked about the nutrition. There's a lot of techniques that are involved here with skiing. So as we progress, eventually there's going to be snow on the ground.
Hmm.
When there's snow, let's talk about how that training changes, and maybe you could elaborate, Emma, on how much of the training is focused on, I call them the techniques of skiing. You got to know how to ski, for goodness sake. So talk about that. We've progressed through the season. Snow's
Hmm.
on the ground. Talk about what's happening now in the training.
Yeah, in Canmore, we are very fortunate that we get on snow early because they have this thing called frozen thunder, where they store snow from the previous season under a giant pile of sawdust. And around Thanksgiving, they take all the sawdust off and they push out the snow and they groom it into about a 2 kilometer loop. So there's no natural snow that's fallen yet. It might still be warm, but we're able to make that transition from roller skiing to skiing on snow, which is, as you said, so important to be working on technique. Um, we do a lot of technique work throughout the summer, even on roller skis. It's
And that
similar
translates
enough.
pretty good, eh? Is that true?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. I think there are some things that you won't be able to, match one to one, but we would do a lot of technique. We would do video analysis where our coach is filming us, and then either we review it with him on the spot. If you're trying to make that change in the moment, he's like, oh, your right arm is just a little bit behind, and we want that more forward. And then even, at the end of most weeks, I would look, there was an app that we used, and I would review my technique and then sort of make a plan. Okay, this was what we were working on last week. This is what we're going to move forward with this week. So a lot of that work is happening during the spring and summer months. And even we have a roller ski treadmill in Canmore. So picture a running treadmill, but it's 5 times as wide. And we're sort of strapped in with a
Cool.
safety harness just in case you fall. And so you're skiing, roller skiing in spot on this treadmill, and the coach can be filming you. And we would even have like a camera set up so you could see yourself, sort of
Wow.
the mechanics of what you're doing. And
Yeah,
again,
the mechanics.
that's that's a lot of like trying to adjust on spot. And then going on snow, same thing. Right away, day
Mm-hmm.
one, getting video analysis. You sort of know what you maybe were working on last year or
Mm-hmm.
things that you tried in the summer, and then it's just about getting hours on snow before the race season starts, basically.
Yeah. So, folks, hopefully we've painted a pretty compelling picture here of the complexity of what's going on in this sport. It's not like running, with all due respect. Like you run, and I build up my engine, and I'm a great runner. But you gotta do that in this sport and learn the techniques of skiing. And oh, don't forget, we just spent 15 minutes, 20 minutes talking about shooting. So,
I mean, I think
so
I think that's why I was able to do it for so long, because it feels like it's never ending on things that you can try and improve. Not to mention the mental. I think that I could work on my mental game for the rest of my life. I mean, I will,
yeah,
I hope to, but
sure,
it's just I was never bored doing biathlon.
yeah.
I'll say that.
Well, Emma, look, at the very beginning, we talked about the aging process. And although you and I, physically, are not what we once were, Emma, we're both smarter than we ever were. Anyway, let's jump forward in time here. We're making fantastic progress. We just talked about it, like what it means to train to be a top level biathlete. Let's address now, Emma. You're going to tell us some stories from the period, let's call it 2010 to 2018. Okay? You're not we're going to cram 8 years together. You're not quite an
Perfect.
Olympian yet. Okay? Because
Hmm.
we got to hear your stories of being at the Olympic Games. We have to hear that. Um, But before we get there, let's talk about becoming an Olympian.
Hmm.
Okay. So through that period, I know it's asking a lot to summarize these 8 years. At what point, Emma, tell us the story of when the thought occurred to you. Wait a second, I'm not just like okay at this. I might be able to represent my country at the Olympic Games if I do this. Talk about that process
Um,
with specifics if you
yes,
can, like when and
yes.
races and everything.
Maybe I'll just 2010 to 2015 feels easy to condense
Okay.
because yes, I was kind of getting the feel for full-time training. I moved to Canmore. I was training with my new club and I was still improving. And what that looked like was once a year there was World Junior Championships, which was an international competition. So I qualified for it in 2010. That was when I was training in Squamish. Um, I qualified for it in 2011 and I qualified for it in 2012. So that was sort of the highlight of the season. I would be doing races in North America, in Canmore, in Whistler. We would go out east to Quebec and do, they were called, yeah, NORAM championships, so North American. But it was this international racing that was so exciting because in 2010 I got to go to Sweden. In 2011 I went to Czech Republic, and 2012 I went to Finland. And that just felt like, okay, this
It's
is pretty
amazing.
cool. I'm getting
That
to
is very cool
travel.
because of
And this is,
biathlon.
yeah, this was the highest level of competition in the world for my age category.
Emma, that's a win. That's already a win.
And I was not doing well, but I was
It doesn't
making it,
matter. You're
I
there.
was I was making it onto the Canadian team and experiencing it. And I think that maybe opened my eyes to what biathlon could be like in Europe and the culture of
Uh,
it.
Sorry, when you say not doing well, I get all you Olympians, Emma. You got the same kind of mentality.
Okay, but I'll give an
N- n-
example. Let's say there was 65 athletes in my category
yeah, on
in
planet Earth.
Finland.
Okay, go on. 65 on planet Earth.
I'm getting 40th. But I have teammates who are getting like 8th. So I see, okay, that is achievable.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's
Um,
all relative. You're right.
in 2012, I aged out, so now I'm a senior woman, which is basically the category I retired as. So once you hit 20, at the time it was 21, now it's 22. You're a senior woman, and that's going to be your category until the end of time, unless you join Masters Biathlon as a 50-year-old or whatever. So I then started making international tours. Um, there are 2 tiers. There's the World Cup, which is the highest level, and then there's IBU Cup. So I started qualifying for these IBU Cups. So again, I was getting to go race in Europe maybe once or twice in the winter. Um, but in 2015, the IBU Cup was in Canmore, and my best result up until that time, maybe I'd had a 30th, 20th. I'd have to check those numbers, but in Canmore, I hit 10 for 10 in a sprint, which I would say as a younger athlete, shooting was a big struggle for me. It did not come naturally to me. So my home IBU Cup, I hit 10 for 10 and I was second. So I went from maybe getting 20th or 30th to a podium. I could not have been more surprised. I was completely shocked, but that really opened the doors because then I qualified um, I wasn't on the national team, but I got to join them for some training camps. And it sort of that felt like it maybe jump started my progression to the national team and then thinking that I did have a chance to go to an Olympics. I don't think the thought had honestly crossed my mind until
Hadn't crossed your mind
2015. Maybe
in the back of
crossed
your
my
mind.
mind, but it didn't feel like a realistic goal,
Sure. And I guess
honestly.
some
Just
some of these some of your contemporaries, as you pointed out at the beginning, have been training in biathlon much longer than you, going back, to high school and grade school.
yeah,
Probably was in the back of their mind more than yours, perhaps. But that was the point when you say, "Hey, maybe so that would have been 3 years from now,
yeah,
Pyeongchang. Maybe
yeah.
this is something I can do."
And the other thing that that did for me is um, there's a route to get funding in Canada as an athlete called carding, which
Yeah.
is essentially like, yeah. So that result,
Talk about that. Talk about that.
it's basically, yeah, government funding that athletes can access if they hit certain benchmarks that their sport has written into this policy. So
And you didn't
me,
qualify for this until then?
till that second place. So
Right.
2015 was the first time, and that made a world of a difference to have this assistance.
Okay, so just for the sake, Emma, of the people who are unaware of the plight, I might call it, of high level athletes in Canada. So for 5 years prior to that, like you're a high level full time basically biathlete, but there's
Yes.
no funding.
No. I worked at Starbucks,
Worked at
um,
Starbucks.
probably 20
You hustled.
20 hours a week,
Yeah.
I would say. Up until maybe 2014, I was working 20 hours a week. I Starbucks has a elite athlete program, so I had my income from work, but also this grant. Like I was just given cash from Starbucks essentially. Again, I
Wow.
applied for it, all these things. So that was a huge piece of me staying with the company for so long
Yeah.
was they supported me as an athlete, and I had very generous parents. So whatever I couldn't cover because it was my living expenses, and then to go to Europe, like I said, I got to go $4,000, $5,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe I only go once in the year, but if I go twice, well, now that's $8,000 to $10,000 on top of living as a part-time barista
Hmm.
who's doing full-time training. So the
Full-time
karting
training.
in 2015, I would say I cut back on my work hours and
Yeah.
I felt like I had more time and energy to put into
Wow.
pursuing biathlon.
I find this story to be very, very important, Emma. I think we send, you watch the Olympics every 2 years, I suppose. Canada sent 330 something athletes to the Summer Olympics and a bit less, 220 or something to the Winter Olympics. Most of these human beings are not. Well, to give you a perspective, Emma, the guy I interviewed before you, actually, chronologically here, had just signed an NFL contract for $45 million. That is the percent of a percent of athletes. Most of the athletes that you watch at the Olympics are
Mhm.
are, are the Emma Lunders
Mhm.
of the world. So I think it's important for the Canadian sports fans to realize that's the situation.
And as you said, biathlon is such an interesting sport, but it's a very expensive sport. And a rifle, you own your rifle, that's about five to $6,000. Skis, you need new skis every year to keep up, to be bringing the new equipment. You need poles. So I will say from probably 2013 onwards, I had skis and poles sponsored. So I didn't, maybe I had a discount. It wasn't a huge amount that I had to pay, but it's just all these things in the background. Our ammunition is exorbitant what we pay. Now, once I was on the national team, it was free, which was amazing, but it's almost like when you need the financial support is when you don't have it. And then as you gain success and momentum
Yeah,
and all
yeah,
these
yeah.
things, then you can kind of make it into more of a living. But I think it would be hard for me not to acknowledge maybe the privilege I had in that I had parents who could financially support me and would financially support me to get to the point where then I was self-sufficient. But it's so challenging to be in a sport like that because it almost feels sometimes like the people with money can be the ones who make it. And
Oh man, of course that's the
like
case.
I mean, that's a whole nother
100% that's the case. Happens in
tangent,
my,
but
my, my sport is hockey, and that is
right.
I
Yeah.
almost say, Emma, if you're talking about equality of opportunity, there should be two leagues: the rich people league and the not rich people league. Look at
I
the
know.
NHL rosters; they're loaded with. First of all, they're loaded with kids of former NHLers. So
Right.
these are people that millions and millions. I mean, you can't play the sport, Emma, unless you're wealthy. Um,
Yeah. And it was, I think I'd had teammates or people on my team who I was certain they worked just as hard as I did, if not harder. They didn't have financial assistance or any help from family or whoever, and kind of just had to stop at some point.
yeah,
But, it's so hard to see that. Um,
Terrible. Yeah.
anyways, it's just I feel like that's something that maybe
It
has to
is.
get mentioned.
I'm glad you mentioned it. I appreciate your candor in mentioning it. I think it's important. Let's move on to more uplifting things. Making the Olympics.
Yeah.
Tell us that story. So you have to qualify 2018. Tell us about the process and this is we're telling stories here, Emma. Part of this is not just science, it's storytelling.
Hmm.
Tell us about the moment that you realize I'm going to be an Olympian and the process
Well,
leading up.
for biathlon, it's sort of a drawn out qualification process. So even 2017 race season counts partially towards the 2018 Olympics.
I did not know that.
And in 2017, that winter, I had I had my best results to date. And as the season went on, I realized that I was definitely in the running for the 2018 Olympics. And then it was, I guess, December of 2017. Um, there was like one, I think I needed a top 20. I had a top 20 in 2017 at the end of the season, and I needed one going into the Olympics. And yeah, it's this qualification period. It's so dependent on what other athletes do and all these factors. But right before Christmas, I had a really amazing race in France. And I was like, it wasn't a guarantee that I would be on the Olympic team, but it was a high enough result that I knew that I was in a very good position in the ranking of the Canadian women.
That's great.
Um, yeah, and we stayed over for Christmas. We did a training camp. We kept racing, and then basically what happens is the qualification period closes. And the day that that happened, which would have been in January at some point, it wasn't like I crossed the finish line and I was like, "Woo, now I'm going to the Olympics." But it was just like arbitrary date, qualification time is over, and my name is third on the list, let's say. Um, so yeah, it's maybe different than if you like cross the finish line and the tape breaks and you're like, I'm going to the Olympics. But it felt like that for me, even though it was just like,
There,
oh,
there are some
January.
sports like that.
Yeah. But honestly, the 2018 Olympics for me was just the best experience. I raced all right. Like it wasn't anything crazy. I was sort of still maybe finding my way and gaining momentum. And it wasn't until a few years later that I had some really top end results, but I had such a fun time. It was in Pyeongchang in Korea, like you said, and the biathletes were racing at 8 or 9 p.m. Korea time. So that is like horrible if you're on a normal schedule where you wake up at 7 a.m. and you have 12 hours of being nervous.
To stew.
But what all the teams did universally, it was like the Norwegians, the Germans, whatever, everyone stayed on Central European time. So no one wanted to like shift because the races were so late. So we would wake up at noon Korea time. We would whatever, do our little jog, do our pre-race things, race at 8 or 9 p.m., have dinner at 11 p.m., midnight after the race, play
Wow.
cards, and then go to bed at like 2 in the morning. And it was so funny because we had the village to ourselves. Everyone else was asleep, and the biathletes, we weren't partying or anything. We're very serious, high performance athletes, but all the countries were just on the same schedule. So at 12 when we woke up, breakfast was already closed, unfortunately. So we would have like dumplings and rice for breakfast. But
Those are the behind the scenes at the
yeah.
Olympic Village, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about the actual competing. And what I might get you to do, Emma, now you're at the grandest stage of them all.
Yeah.
There is no higher level you can aspire to attain as an athlete.
Hmm.
From the point of view, because I imagine the physiology is the same, but the psychology might be different. So if you were to point out something that you learned from competing at the Olympics that you didn't know going in, or compare and contrast the differences of competing in that environment versus lower environments, what might you say?
I would say I was surprised to how similar it was for a World Cup. The feeling for
Really, eh?
me. Yeah,
Really interesting.
I knew it was the Olympics, but it's the same rifle that I'm shooting. The targets are
Yeah.
the same distance. The course is a different course, but the same length. And maybe going, to the start line, there was some excitement and some nerves and thinking, oh my God, this is the Olympics. There are the Olympic rings on your race bib. That was pretty cool. But once I started, it was, it felt like a normal race to me. I would say maybe the hard part about Korea was it's not a popular sport there. So we didn't have these like massive filled
Yeah.
stadiums. So that too, I think maybe
Probably.
allowed it to feel a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah. I never thought of that, but you're right, of course. And I'm going to assume not that way in Beijing either.
Beijing was crickets because it was a lockdown. There were no
Oh, that was the.
spectators.
Of course, you're right.
I know. So
You're right.
Beijing was an experience on its own, but I do think that maybe had it been like one of our big
Oh
venues
yeah.
that's super loud and blah blah blah, but it was I would say it was a nice thing that I was able just to focus on doing my process and like my craft and not be too wrapped up. And then when I went to the village, that's when I was excited. I would see like someone who had just won a gold medal in snowboarding. I would see like your idols from the cross country team or whoever. Like there's someone just in front of me getting noodles that I know has an Olympic gold medal from 4 hours prior. And that is just like the coolest feeling. And a big thing at the Olympics is pin collecting. Each athlete from each nation gets like, so I got all these Canadian pins, and the goal is to go around. So I got really into pin collecting with other countries, and I still have my Olympic accreditation and all the pins pinned around the lanyard that I managed to trade. And I did it in Beijing too, just a little
Emma,
socially
never,
distanced.
never lose that.
I will not. I will not.
If I could reach, I have a hat of all my hockey pins in tournaments that I played. It's in the other room. I couldn't show you.
And
Not half as cool as your thing,
yeah, but when I
but
got them, I said, why do I want this bag of pins? Like, who do they think I am? 2 days later, I'm so into it. Pin collecting with anyone who will talk to me.
all right, Emma. Before we put a cap on the Olympics, so you've been there twice. If someone was to ask you best Olympic moment,
Mm, Pyeongchang walking in opening ceremonies.
Pyeongchang opening ceremonies.
Yeah, because you're told what outfit to wear. You get a piece of paper that tells you, okay, you're wearing these pants because you go into the Olympic hotel room and you have a full duffel bag, and that's all the clothing you're allowed to wear for the 2 weeks, is this Canadian sponsored gear. So you get a sheet of paper that tells you exactly what to wear. You dress up with all your teammates, and then you go in as your country. So it's just like we were in this wall of red and white. And in Beijing, there were opening and closing ceremonies, but they were 4 hours from where we were staying. So I didn't participate.
And no
And it,
fans anyway, right?
yeah, so I think having that experience, because I got to do closing ceremonies too in Korea, which was awesome, but opening was just like, okay, I'm here. This is real. So for sure that's it for me.
There you go. This is real, and you made it. And
Yeah.
Emma, you made it. You made it here this evening with me, which I will be forever grateful that you took the time this evening to talk about biathlon and more, Emma. Did we talk about here in the last hour? But our time is almost up. Um, Emma, before we go, we are going to play then 10 questions with two-time Olympic biathlete Emma Lunder. All right, Emma, so we got just a series of questions. Actually, Emma, these questions alternate from like nutrition, sports, training to, we'll just call it getting to know Emma. We have two categories of questions and
Okay.
they vary. So we'll go back and forth. Some are, like I said, very relevant topic on hand here, sports science and whatnot. First one's actually along those lines. Emma, question number one. If you were going to eat something that is generally not conducive to Olympic level biathlon performance, what are you going to reach for?
Maybe a McDonald's cheeseburger.
McDonald's cheeseburger. That would not have been my answer. But hey, to each his own. All right, that was a nutrition question. Emma, question number 2. This is a multiple choice question. This is a good one. Okay, multiple choice question. Emma, I'm going to give you 5 Canadian musical recording artists. You tell me who you're choosing. Ready? Here we go. A. Drake. B. Justin Bieber. C. Michael Bublé. D. Bryan Adams. E. The Tragically Hip.
Justin Bieber.
Justin Bieber. Also not my choice, Emma.
Surprise, surprise. I bet you're picking Drake.
No, no, no. I could give you the or anyway. It's not 10 questions with me. Was Drake your number 2?
No, I actually would have maybe said Tragically Hip. I'm not a huge
Okay,
Drake listener.
me either. I think Drake. He has a song about a cell phone. Is that right?
He sure does.
Okay,
He
I don't
sure
know anything about
does.
it. All right, more physiology. Here we go, Emma. This number 3 is a question everyone gets answered, no matter who you are. Uh, what is, Emma, your personal best 1 rep max bench press?
We don't do traditional bench press.
I know you don't.
I would say
Yeah,
we do dumbbell bench press, and I think I did 50 pounds.
that's fantastic. The answer might be I've gotten a lot of very cool, very interesting answers for this. I don't care is a popular answer. Anyway,
I wish I had an answer.
no, why would a biathlete know was 1 rep max or her 1 rep max bench press? It's not your game. Anyway, my son, who's 15, thinks this is the most important question I ask
Of
anybody.
course,
Anyway,
of
question
course.
number 4, Emma. Emma, what is the best board game?
Mm, backgammon?
Backgammon? Sounds good. Now we're getting similar pages here, Emma.
I had to
Question
think if
number.
that counted as a board game.
Yeah, 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 that counts.
Okay, okay, that's my family's game, so 100% backgammon.
Backgammon, that's great. Question number 5. I don't know if you know this. You might not know the answer to this either, but it's at least more relevant to a biathlete. And I don't know how much physiological testing you did and how much of a numbers person you were with knowing all these things. Emma, do you know your personal best VO2 max? No, you don't know. So
I no, I don't.
you've been tested, I'm sure, though. You've had the test done, right?
I have
Yeah,
a
but
lot, loads of times.
loads of times. But this is an interesting. This is why look, folks. You can learn things in 10 questions too. It's not just all fun and games here. Um, the moral of the story is the athlete doesn't necessarily need to know all this data stuff. That is the moral of the story. Um, there's
Like I could
many
tell
good
you my
exa
max speed on this skate treadmill, but the VO2
Yeah,
max, that's just
you
not
don't.
sticking in my brain.
That's an interesting answer, Emma. Okay, where are we? Question number 6. We got a few straightforward ones here. Straight 6. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Question number 7. This is going to be tougher, Emma.
Okay.
Much tougher. Flames or Canucks?
Canucks. I grew up in BC and I don't
Gotta
watch
go with.
hockey anymore. So
Don't watch hockey anymore, eh?
I'm back.
Well,
I'm
that's but.
talking Canucks in the Luongo days.
Hey, there you go. My sub question was going to be. I didn't want to put you on the spot though. I was going to say, were you able to name a favorite Canuck? And there you go. Luongo's a great answer. Emma, I would love to interview him.
Oh,
I, I'm
yeah. That would
I'm
be a
reaching.
good one.
I'm going to reach out to that guy.
You got to find his people.
How I have no earthly idea, but I'm going to try to make it happen. All right, question number 8. I don't know. I think you might have an answer for this. I'm not sure. I'm kind of shot in the dark here, but let's go for it anyway. Hypothetical situation, Emma. You ready? Hypothetical situation. You have been admitted as a student at Hogwarts School. Which of the houses is the Sorting Hat going to put Emma Lunder? A. Gryffindor, B. Slytherin, C. Hufflepuff, D. Ravenclaw.
Slytherin. I feel like I want to say Gryffindor, but I'm thinking Slytherin.
Gryffindor is the easy answer. Everyone would
I know
say that.
everyone wants Gryffindor, and I don't want to say Hufflepuff because it's like not that nice. Slytherin.
I would be a Ravenclaw, clearly. I don't
I
know if
could
you'd
see
be
that.
Slytherin. Emma, I don't know if you'd be Slytherin. I
I
don't know
think
you
I
that
can have
well.
my moment. One, I will say there was always a skier Halloween party back in the day when I was a less serious athlete, and I did dress up as Malfoy once, so that came to mind.
I thought you'd have an answer to this question. All right, question number 9. I like this question too. If you were to look back through your career, Emma, was there a single, or maybe a couple if there's more than one, but I'm looking for a coach that was really influential in shaping your career?
I think it would be the coach that I had when I first came to Canmore in 2010, who was the head coach of Rocky Mountain Racers. And yeah, his name is John Jakes. I gained so much information in such a short period of time, and I had a lot of fun doing it with him.
Well, that's two key elements there of coaching for sure. John Jakes, you say, was the name?
Yeah.
There you go. All right, and the final of 10 questions, Emma. You were fantastic at this game, by the way. You were a winner at not only biathlon, but at 10 questions. And we're going to piggyback on some of the topics that we talked about. We hit on some of these things. Tell us, Emma, in general, about the organization known as Fast and Female.
Hmm. This was an organization that was started by an Olympian cross-country skier, Chandra Crawford, and I raced on the national team with her sister, Rosanna, who was sort of a mentor figure for me, and basically gives an opportunity for young girls and women to get together and do sport, learn about sport, and they have fast and female role models, which a lot of athletes in the community, including myself, volunteered as, and we would kind of put on events and just be there to, yeah, cheer on some girls and get them excited about sport.
So, Emma, clearly a worthwhile cause, get girls involved in sports, and clearly a very, very worthwhile role model in yourself. They'd be so lucky to have someone like you, Emma, to do that.
Thank you.
Um, well, look, on that note, you really did a tremendous job here, I think, today. I really, really enjoyed speaking with you, Emma. From the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for talking to me about the great, great sport of biathlon.
You are so welcome. I'm really glad that you took an interest, and yeah, this is fun. Honestly, more fun than I expected to sort of reminisce. And yeah, I think
Well,
biathlon's been such a big part of my life, and it's a really, really amazing sport and community also to be a part of.
I concur. And on that note, I'm going to sign off in the way that I always sign off by saying, let's go Canada. Support Canadian athletes.